Your focus is being stolen right now, and you don't even realize it. In a world where distractions are just a click away, most people will waste years chasing noise instead of success. But what if you could train your brain to block out the noise? What if you could master focus like the greatest minds in history? The truth is, focus isn't just a skill, it's a weapon. And today, the tortoise is about to teach you how to use it. The sun was setting on the lush meadow where the tortoise made his home. He had spent most of the day slowly moving from one end of the meadow to the other, with his usual deliberate pace. But today was different. Today, he was preparing for a journey that would change not just his life, but the lives of all those who looked up to him. Tortoise had always been a symbol of wisdom. His slow and steady nature had earned him a reputation. Yet, even he knew that the world around him was changing rapidly. In the past, the world had been quiet enough for him to focus on his goals with ease. But now, there were distractions everywhere. From the constant rustling of the trees to the loud chirps of birds and even the whispers of other animals, Tortoise realized something important. Focus was becoming a rare skill. As he sat on a rock, contemplating the challenges ahead, he noticed the little creatures around him. Rabbits hopping from one place to another, squirrels scurrying in all directions, and even the bees buzzing about in a frantic dance. It seemed like everyone was in a hurry, running from task to task without stopping for a moment to focus. Tortoise couldn't help but smile. He had always known the secret. Focus wasn't about speed or multitasking. It was about presence, about slowing down enough to really understand what mattered. He took a deep breath and began to reflect on how he had come to understand the art of focus. It all started years ago when Tortoise was just a young hatchling. Back then, life had been simple. There were no pressing demands, no competing interests, just the sun, the grass, and the river that flowed beside his home. He had everything he needed to concentrate. There were no mobile phones, no televisions blaring, no endless streams of information to keep him distracted. But over the years, Tortoise had watched the world evolve. The other animals in the meadow had grown more impatient, more restless. The world had become louder. The constant noise of the wind, the calls of birds, the hum of insects, everything seemed to conspire against him. The challenge wasn't simply physical anymore. It was mental. The world had grown so noisy that it was hard to hear his own thoughts. One day, while making his way across the meadow, he encountered a young rabbit named Skip, who was furiously hopping from one place to another, completely oblivious to the beauty around him. "Skip," Tortoise called gently. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Skip paused, panting. "I'm just trying to finish everything before the day ends. There's so much to do, and I don't want to waste time." Tortoise chuckled, a slow smile curling at the edges of his mouth. "But the truth is, young one, you are wasting time by trying to do everything at once." Skip's ears twitched, clearly puzzled. "What do you mean? Isn't multitasking a good thing?" Tortoise shook his head slowly. "Multitasking is a myth. It's a trick our minds play on us to feel productive. But in reality, all it does is scatter your energy and make everything harder." Skip looked down at the ground, his small paws twitching in thought. "So, what should I do instead?" Tortoise settled onto a nearby rock, motioning for Skip to join him. "Focus," he said simply. "Focus on one thing at a time. When you give your full attention to something, you not only complete it more efficiently but also more effectively. This is the key to mastering your life. In this world full of distractions, focusing on the present moment is your greatest ally." Skip sat still, listening intently. "But how do I even begin? There's so much to distract me." Tortoise smiled. "The first step is to recognize your distractions. Then you must set a clear intention. When you make the decision to focus, your mind starts to align with your goal. But it's not just about the mind. It's about creating an environment that fosters focus." Tortoise paused, sensing a shift in the air. The wind had picked up, rustling the leaves around them. But Tortoise wasn't distracted. He remained calm, centered, his gaze focused on Skip. "You see, Skip, the environment you place yourself in is critical. If you are constantly surrounded by distractions, your ability to focus will be diluted. Skip blinked, understanding slowly dawning. So, you mean I shouldn't try to focus on important things when there's too much going on around me? Exactly, Tortoise replied. The world is full of noise, but you don't need to listen to all of it. Choose where to direct your attention. If you need quiet, find it. If you need solitude, seek it. But above all, set boundaries for yourself. Skip nodded. I think I understand. So, if I want to focus, I need to make sure I'm not trying to do everything at once, right? Tortoise's eyes twinkled. Precisely. And more importantly, you must be patient with yourself. The journey to mastering focus doesn't happen overnight. It requires practice, consistency, and the willingness to learn from your mistakes. The next day, Tortoise decided it was time for Skip to test his focus skills. He had promised the young rabbit that they would venture to the far end of the meadow to collect fresh herbs for the coming winter, but Tortoise had one condition. You must focus on the task at hand, Tortoise said. The journey will be long, and there will be plenty of distractions along the way. But if you remain focused, we will complete it with ease. As they set off, Skip's energy was high. He bounced ahead of Tortoise, eager to reach their destination. But as they moved along the path, Skip became easily distracted. He darted after a butterfly, chased a shadow, and even paused to nibble on a patch of clover. Tortoise remained calm, moving at his usual steady pace. After a while, Tortoise called out to Skip. Have you noticed how often you've been distracted, young one? Skip stopped in his tracks, his ears drooping. I didn't realize it, but now that you mention it, I've been hopping all over the place. Tortoise smiled. Distractions will always be present, Skip. But you must learn to ignore them and remain focused on your goal. Focus is not about ignoring the world, but about choosing what matters most in any given moment. Skip's ears perked up. So, you're saying it's okay to let distractions come and go, as long as I keep my focus on what I'm doing? Exactly, Tortoise said. The key is not to fight the distractions, but to acknowledge them and then return your focus to your task. As the day wore on, Skip began to practice his newfound focus. He stayed on the path, ignoring the butterflies, the shadows, and the tempting clover. He realized that when he focused, everything seemed easier. He was able to move faster and with more purpose, and before he knew it, they had reached their destination. Tortoise looked at Skip, a proud glint in his eyes. See, you did it. You focused and we completed our task. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Skip beamed with pride. I feel so much better now that I know how to focus. I can see how powerful it is. Tortoise nodded. This is just the beginning. Mastering your focus is a lifelong journey. There will be days when distractions seem overwhelming, and there will be times when your mind wanders. But with practice, you will become more and more skilled at directing your attention. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Tortoise and Skip sat together, their work for the day complete. The meadow around them was peaceful, but Tortoise knew that the true peace came from within, through focus. And that, young one, is how you begin to master your focus, Tortoise said. Focus is not a gift. It's a practice. And like any practice, it gets better with time. Skip nodded, his mind filled with the wisdom of his mentor. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with Tortoise's guidance, he was ready to face the challenges of a distracting world. The wind whistled softly through the branches as Skip, full of energy and excitement, took his first few steps into the vast field ahead. He had no idea that the journey ahead would challenge him in ways he could never have imagined. Skip's gaze fell upon the open meadow that stretched before him. A seemingly endless expanse of green grass rippled in the gentle breeze, and the warm sunlight bathed everything in a golden hue. It was the kind of place that made Skip want to race forward without a second thought. It was perfect for running, for forgetting everything but the moment. But today it wasn't about rushing. The wise Tortoise, standing a few paces away, had already settled down on a rock, looking serene and unhurried as he watched Skip bounce around the field, his youthful energy practically leaping out of him. Skip was eager to begin. He had learned the lesson of focus well enough from the first day's teachings, but now, standing before a challenge, his mind felt as if it were already drifting. Then the first test arrived. From the corner of the field, a series of colorful butterflies appeared, fluttering in the air with dazzling beauty. Their delicate wings glistened in the sunlight, and they danced playfully around Skip's vision. Skip's eyes widened, his body tense with excitement. "Look at them, Tortoise," he exclaimed. "I have to chase them." Tortoise gave him a knowing smile but didn't speak immediately. He simply motioned for Skip to come closer and take a seat beside him. "You want to chase those butterflies, don't you?" Skip's heart raced. "Of course. They're so beautiful. How can I not chase them? They're calling me." Tortoise nodded slowly, his eyes calm. "But think about it, Skip. If you give in to every fleeting temptation, where will you end up? Will you find what you seek, or will you be lost in the chase, never truly reaching anything at all?" Skip was taken aback. He'd never really considered it that way. "But I have to catch them. I can feel the wind in my fur. I'm faster than them. They won't get away." Tortoise sighed gently. "The chase, Skip, is a distraction. The moment you lose focus, the butterflies will slip away, leaving you with nothing but the memory of your chase. It's in stillness that you can truly see the beauty." That moment, Skip realized something profound. The butterflies weren't just a distraction. They were a metaphor for the fleeting things that would try to pull him away from his goal. He had to make a choice. "But what if I can catch them and still focus on the goal?" Skip asked, not quite ready to let go of his pursuit. Tortoise chuckled, a soft, patient sound. "That's the challenge, Skip. Focus isn't about running after everything that catches your eye. It's about knowing where to direct your energy, your thoughts, and your steps. What matters most isn't the chase. It's the steady progress toward what you truly seek." Skip felt his resolve weakening as he glanced once more at the butterflies. They floated lazily through the air, teasing him with their beauty. He wanted to leap forward, to be part of that moment, to let his excitement carry him. But Tortoise's words anchored him, and slowly, he lowered his gaze. Then, Skip noticed something that surprised him. The longer he watched the butterflies without moving, the more beautiful they became. He noticed the way the sunlight made their wings sparkle like diamonds, the way they hovered gracefully in the air before landing delicately on the flowers. It was a beauty he hadn't truly seen before, not in such detail. And as he sat there, still and calm, he felt a deep sense of peace, a peace he hadn't expected to find. It was at that moment that Skip realized something important. Focus didn't mean ignoring the world around him. It meant being present with it, observing it with intention, rather than letting his mind race off at the first sign of something shiny. "Are you ready to continue?" Tortoise asked, breaking the silence. Skip nodded slowly, feeling a new sense of clarity settle within him. "Yes, Tortoise. I think I understand now. The chase isn't as important as the journey." Tortoise smiled again, a deep, knowing smile that spoke of a wisdom beyond words. "Very good, Skip. The journey is where focus lives. It's in every step, every breath, every moment that you choose to give your full attention." As they continued on their way, the field opening up before them, Skip kept his eyes forward, not on the butterflies or the distractions that might lie ahead. He was learning that focus wasn't about eliminating the world's temptations. It was about choosing what truly mattered, what aligned with his goal. The road ahead was long, and there were more lessons to be learned. But Skip had taken the first step toward mastering his focus. But then, something unexpected happened. The path before Skip was winding and treacherous, but in the distance, he saw a glimmer of something extraordinary. It was moving fast, like a blur of motion, and it beckoned him to follow. Little did he know this was the next test of his focus. The day began as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the landscape. Skip and Tortoise had journeyed through the forest, their steps slow and steady, when suddenly, they found themselves at the edge of a vast, rushing river. The water flowed relentlessly, crashing over rocks with an intense roar that filled the air. It was a river like no other. The water wasn't just moving swiftly. It was a shimmering river that seemed almost alive, as if it held secrets that only the brave could uncover. Skip couldn't help but stare at the flow, mesmerized by its power and speed. But there was something else. From across the river, Skip spotted a flash of color, a vibrant red bird flying low over the water, darting quickly from one tree to the next. The bird was so swift that Skip's eyes could hardly keep up with its movements. It flew like a streak of light, so fast, so fluid, that it seemed to taunt him. For a moment, Skip felt the thrill of pursuit rising within him again. The bird was just like the butterflies. Too fast, too elusive, and yet, he couldn't help but want to chase it. The idea of racing it filled him with excitement. This was a challenge he hadn't encountered before, a creature that seemed to match his speed. But then, Tortoise's voice broke through the rising excitement in Skip's chest. "What do you see, Skip?" he asked calmly. His gaze focused not on the bird but on the rushing water. Skip was almost reluctant to tear his eyes away from the bird, but he did. "I see a bird," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "It's so fast, Tortoise. I could catch it if I tried." Tortoise didn't immediately respond. Instead, he looked down at the ground, then up at Skip with eyes full of wisdom. "Speed," he said quietly, "is an illusion. It's easy to mistake the rush of motion for progress. But ask yourself, what do you hope to find by chasing it? Speed in itself can only take you so far." Skip's heart pounded with anticipation, but there was a flicker of doubt. "But why wouldn't I chase it, Tortoise? It's the fastest thing I've ever seen. If I don't try, I'll never know what it feels like to match that speed." Tortoise shook his head slowly, his voice calm yet firm. "It's not the speed that matters, Skip. It's the direction. Speed without focus only leads to distraction. When you focus on speed for its own sake, you'll miss everything important around you. The bird is fast, but its speed can lead it into peril. The river's current is strong, and even the quickest of creatures can be caught in it." Skip felt his excitement waver. "But I feel like if I just give it one good try, I'll catch it. Can do it. I've got the energy." Tortoise's expression softened. "Energy, Skip, is not the same as focus. And focus is what will guide you through even the swiftest of currents. The bird may seem like the answer, but it is not the goal. And the river, though powerful, cannot be defeated with haste. Instead, it's patience and presence that will carry you through." Skip watched the bird again, its wings cutting through the air, and his desire to chase it only grew stronger. But Tortoise's words echoed in his mind. Was it really speed he wanted, or was it something deeper? Something that would take more than a quick dash to obtain? With a deep breath, Skip finally let his gaze move away from the bird. He turned back to Tortoise, who was already making his way toward the edge of the river. "Where are you going?" Skip asked. "I'm crossing the river," Tortoise replied simply. "And you will follow me, not by speed but by focus. Pay attention to each step you take." The water was swift, and the rocks in the river were slick, but Tortoise moved deliberately, each step carefully placed. Skip, following behind, had to concentrate with every movement. He kept his focus on the next rock, making sure his footing was steady, his body aligned. The sound of the river roared in his ears, but the more Skip focused on his steps, the more the world around him seemed to quiet. The rush of the water faded, and in that moment, he understood. It wasn't about rushing or running. It was about taking each step with intention, feeling each rock beneath his feet, and moving with purpose. But then, as they reached the far side of the river, Skip heard the call of the bird once again, flying high above them. This time, though, his mind didn't waver. He kept walking, steady and deliberate, with Tortoise ahead of him. It was then that Skip felt it, an undeniable shift within himself. He realized that the thrill of the chase, the rush of speed, had nothing to do with truly achieving his goals. The real challenge lay in mastering his focus, in learning to be present and steady, even when the world around him seemed to be moving at 100 miles an hour. But the truth is that it wasn't until Skip's feet had firmly landed on solid ground that he understood Tortoise's lesson fully. The bird was no longer a distraction. The journey itself had become his focus, and with each step, he was building something stronger than speed. He was building mastery. The winds began to pick up, dark clouds gathered overhead, and an eerie stillness fell over the forest. Skip felt a sudden unease. He had learned so much, but could he face the real test of his focus when the storm raged within and around him? As Skip and Tortoise trudged deeper into the forest, the once peaceful air grew tense with an unsettling energy. The trees around them swayed with the growing winds, their leaves rustling in whispers, and the sky darkened with clouds that seemed to gather from nowhere. A storm was approaching, but it wasn't the kind of storm Skip had expected. "This doesn't feel right," Skip muttered, pulling his cloak tightly around him. His eyes darted nervously to the horizon as flashes of lightning painted the sky in bright, jagged lines. Tortoise, however, remained calm. His steps were deliberate, unfazed by the sudden change in the atmosphere. "Storms come in many forms, Skip," he said, his voice carrying a weight of experience. "Some are born in the skies, others within us. It's easy to be distracted by the loudness of a storm, but true focus lies in understanding how to weather it." Skip felt the rising tension inside him, and it wasn't just the storm that caused it. In the depths of his mind, he had been struggling with something much more difficult: his own doubts. As Tortoise's words echoed in his ears, Skip couldn't help but think about the temptation of speed, the allure of fleeting success. Every lesson he'd learned so far had been important, but there was an unspoken pressure building inside him, a need to prove himself, to show that he could master everything in a hurry. It was at that moment that a loud crack split the air, followed by a flash of blinding light. The thunder that followed rattled the ground beneath them, and the storm was upon them with the fury of a wild beast. "Take shelter," Tortoise shouted, and without hesitation, he moved toward a thick cluster of trees that would provide some cover from the wind and rain. Skip hesitated only for a moment before following suit, his heart pounding in his chest. The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, soaking the earth, and the wind howled like a distant predator on the hunt. Skip stumbled as he ran, his feet slipping on the wet ground, but Tortoise moved steadily, as if the storm had no power over him. "Focus on your steps, Skip," Tortoise called, his voice cutting through the roar of the wind. "The storm will pass, but you mustn't let it sweep you away." Skip nodded, though the anxiety gnawing at him was palpable. He could feel his mind racing as the storm raged around him. The wind howled, the rain lashed against his face, and the world felt like it was closing in. He was overwhelmed by the noise, by the storm outside and the storm inside his mind. But then, amidst the chaos, Skip caught sight of Tortoise, still moving with purpose through the downpour. It was as if nothing in the world could shake his focus. Tortoise's calm presence was a beacon in the chaos. Skip's racing thoughts began to slow as he reminded himself of the lessons Tortoise had shared with him: the need to be present, to take one step at a time, and to remain grounded even when the world around him was spinning. But then, a sudden gust of wind knocked Skip off balance. He stumbled to the ground, the mud slick and unforgiving. Panic surged within him as he tried to right himself, but the storm's ferocity seemed determined to push him down. "You see," a voice inside Skip's mind whispered, "it's too much. You can't focus in a storm. You'll never be able to weather this. You're not strong enough." The doubt threatened to overwhelm him, but in that moment Tortoise appeared beside him, his steady gaze unwavering. "Remember, Skip," he said, his voice soothing but firm, "the storm isn't the challenge. It's how you respond to it that matters. Your focus is your strength, not the absence of adversity." Skip looked up at Tortoise, the weight of his words sinking in. The storm outside raged on, but in that instant, Skip realized something profound. The real storm wasn't the wind or the rain. It was the turbulence within his mind, the constant barrage of self-doubt, fear, and distractions that threatened to steal his attention away from the present. "Take a breath," Tortoise continued, kneeling down beside him. "Focus on what is right in front of you. When you focus on the task at hand, the storm, both inside and out, becomes less overwhelming. It's not about silencing the noise. It's about learning to hear through it." Skip inhaled deeply, the cool air filling his lungs. He closed his eyes for a moment, tuning out the chaos around him. The storm outside was loud, fierce, and unrelenting, but within he found stillness. It wasn't perfection, but it was a start. When he opened his eyes again, the world seemed a little quieter. The storm had not subsided, but Skip felt a shift within himself. His mind, no longer frantically racing, was now centered on the present moment. The wind was still howling, the rain still pouring, but Skip felt more capable than before. Tortoise stood, offering Skip a hand to help him up. "Focus is not about avoiding the storms, Skip. It's about how you navigate through them. A storm may rage, but you have the power to remain steady." Skip took Tortoise's hand and stood up, his legs trembling slightly but his resolve strengthening. As the storm raged on, he took a slow, deliberate step forward. The path was unclear, the air thick with tension, but Skip had learned something vital. It wasn't about silencing the world's chaos. It was about finding his anchor in the storm. But then, just as he had begun to feel confident in his newfound focus, a loud crash echoed from the distance. A tree had fallen, blocking their path. Skip's heart skipped a beat. Another obstacle. But this time, he didn't feel the urge to rush forward or to panic. He simply turned to Tortoise, waiting for the next step. Tortoise smiled, his eyes gleaming with pride. "Focus is not just for the journey, it's for the obstacles too." The storm had raged for hours, the dark clouds finally beginning to part as the first light of dawn peeked through. Skip stood at the edge of the forest, his heart still racing but his mind now calm, clear, and focused. Could he truly apply what he'd learned to the biggest challenge yet, the one that awaited him beyond the storm? The rain had finally slowed to a gentle drizzle, and the wind, once howling like an untamed beast, had softened to a whisper. The storm had passed, but its impact lingered in the air. The forest, still soaked and heavy with the remnants of the tempest, seemed to breathe in sync with Skip's now steady heartbeat. Tortoise stood beside him, his slow, deliberate gaze sweeping across the landscape, taking in every detail with the patience only experience could provide. Skip took a deep breath, feeling the cool, fresh air fill his lungs, the weight of the storm still lingering in the atmosphere. "We've made it through, Skip," Tortoise said, his voice calm yet firm. "But this is only the beginning of the real test." Skip looked at him, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" Tortoise's eyes twinkled with a knowing smile. "The storm was a metaphor for the distractions and challenges we face in life. But now the world is calm, and yet the greatest challenge remains. The question is, can you maintain your focus when there is no storm to drive you?" Skip's mind buzzed with the weight of Tortoise's words. The storm had tested his focus, yes, but now he realized that the real test was finding focus when life was calm, when there were no external distractions. Could he still hold on to his focus, his purpose? "Life is full of distractions, Skip," Tortoise continued. "But it's not just the storms that pull us off track. It's the moments when everything seems easy, when everything is calm. In these times, we must remember the lessons of the storm, the strength we've built through it." Skip nodded, understanding beginning to take root. He'd learned how to focus in the chaos, but what about in the stillness? Could he still apply the same discipline when the world around him was calm? It was a different kind of challenge, one that required him to remain just as vigilant and purposeful, even when it seemed like there was nothing to fight against. Tortoise led him forward, and they made their way deeper into the forest, the path now clearer and the air more peaceful. But Skip noticed something strange. The world had changed, not just the environment around him but his perception. The forest, now quiet and serene, seemed almost overwhelming in its stillness. He could hear the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the gentle murmur of a stream nearby. It was so much to take in, and yet it was all so still. "You see, Skip," Tortoise said as they walked, "focus is not just about facing the chaos. It's also about embracing the quiet. The quiet can be just as distracting if you let your mind wander. To master your focus, you must learn to find purpose in every moment, whether the storm is raging or the world is still." Skip looked down at his feet, stepping carefully on the moist ground. The lesson was becoming clearer now. Focus wasn't something that came easily, nor was it something that was only needed in times of crisis. It was a discipline that required constant attention, a skill that had to be cultivated both in the storms and in the calm. Suddenly Tortoise stopped. Ahead, there was a clearing bathed in the soft golden light of the rising sun. The path they had been following was coming to an end, and Skip felt a sense of both accomplishment and uncertainty. "This is it," Tortoise said, his voice rich with meaning. "You've learned how to focus through the storm, but now you must take that focus and carry it with you. Beyond this forest, beyond the storm, is the true test of your discipline." Skip looked up, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do I do now?" Tortoise smiled. "You go forward. You use the focus you've learned to face whatever comes next. Life is full of distractions, challenges, and storms, but in the end, it's your ability to stay centered, to stay focused, that will guide you to where you need to be." Skip stood tall, the weight of his journey weighing heavily on him, but there was a newfound sense of clarity in his eyes. He wasn't the same as he had been when he first began his journey with Tortoise. The distractions that once overwhelmed him no longer had the same power. His focus was no longer something he had to chase after. It was something he had within him, something he had learned to cultivate. As the sun rose higher, casting its warm light over the forest, Skip took a deep breath. He had learned the most important lesson of all. That focus wasn't just a skill, it was a way of life. It wasn't about achieving perfect focus all the time, but about constantly striving to return to it, no matter the circumstances. The journey had not been easy, but it had been transformative. And now, as Skip stood at the threshold of the next phase of his life, he understood that no matter what storms or calm would come his way, he would remain steady. Tortoise looked at him, his wise eyes filled with pride. "You've done it, Skip. You've mastered the art of focus." Skip smiled, feeling a sense of peace and accomplishment wash over him. "I'm ready," he said softly. As they stepped into the clearing together, the morning sun shining brightly ahead of them, Skip knew that this was only the beginning of his true journey. With focus as his guide, he felt ready to face whatever came next, no longer fearful of distractions or chaos, but confident in his ability to navigate them. And so, the tortoise's lessons had become a part of him, a permanent, unshakable foundation that would carry him through life's challenges, whether in the storm or in the calm. The world would always be full of distractions, but now Skip knew how to reclaim his attention, and he was ready to use his focus to shape the world in his own way. This story about Tortoise and the Skip, the rabbit, teaches us that true focus is not about speed or multitasking, but about being present and intentional with every of our actions. In a world full of distractions, learning how to master our focus allows us to navigate both chaos and calm with clarity and purpose. The greatest challenges come not only from external distractions but also from our own inner struggles. However, by practicing patience, discipline, and self-awareness, we can train our minds to remain steady through life's storms and stay committed to our goals. Thank you for watching this video until the end. We hope you found this lessons valuable and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and follow us for more insightful content. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay focused, stay determined, and we'll see you in the next video.